We have tons of news to cover today, including some trade talk around Jacob Chychrun in Arizona. Plus, we're talking about Pittsburgh and Ottawa and the rumor mill as well. We have tons of injury updates from NHL training camps getting ready to open. News out of Toronto, Buffalo, another PTO, and a whole lot more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of news today to open up and talk about. Obviously, training camps are getting underway. Teams are making media availabilities earlier today. There's all kinds of news to come out of a variety of teams, and we're going to do our best to go through all of it. A lot of it's, fairly small little tidbits, but let's try to get through it all here as we go. The Ducks, were able to confirm, do have another player on a PTO, and that's former Predator Rocco Grimaldi, so he will be in Anaheim Ducks training camp. The Calgary Flames, as I mentioned yesterday, there was rumor they were signing Brett Ritchie to a one-year deal. That's now been confirmed. The Flames have signed him to a one-year deal valued at $750. They also got a deal done with their RFA center, Adam Ruzicka, who gets a 2-year contract valued at $762,000 as an AAV. The first year is a two-way deal. The second year is a one-way deal. We also learned with the Flames that Andrew Mangiapane will be a little bit late getting to training camp, and Oliver Shillington is also going to be missing the first part of training camp as well, due to a personal family matter. So certainly, hopefully, everybody can get back and go in there. But the Flames certainly going to be interesting to watch this year. We also got another signing in Arizona. They came to terms with RFA center Barrett Hayton on a 2-year deal. His average annual value is $1.775. The Florida Panthers also came to terms with a prospect, Patrick Giles, who's a 22-year-old undrafted college free agent, and he gets a 2-year ELC. He's a centerman, 6'4", 200 pounds, out of Boston College. So certainly looks like a very interesting player. Not somebody I'm overly familiar with, so I'm not real sure what the likelihood is of him, getting any NHL time this year. I'd probably say pretty slim, but should be able to go down to the American Hockey League affiliate and hopefully have a good season, start his development on the pro side of the game. The Islanders also, in typical Islander fashion, announced a slew of signings today. They've signed RFA Parker Witherspoon. They've also confirmed the signing of Corey Schneider, who I mentioned a few days ago was expected to be in the organization, but I wasn't sure how the contract was going to be structured. It is a 1-year, 2-way deal, the same as he's had most recently. And they've also signed a KHL free agent and his former NHLer, Nikita Soshnikov. Now, Soshnikov would have familiarity with Lou Lamoriello. Of course, he broke in with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Didn't get a chance to play a ton of hockey, but of course, he came into the league right around the same time the Leafs were getting, there were players like Matthews and Nylander and those guys were coming up. So he kind of got blocked out of a top 6 role pretty early with all those players emerging the way they did so quickly out of their draft years. But he did get limited action there. Was in the Leafs organization for a few years. Played briefly in St. Louis, and then he's been back in the KHL. I believe it's the last 3 or 4 seasons. So certainly, an interesting player. He's somebody who might be able to play a top 9 role. I know when he was younger coming up to the Leafs, I know he had a really good shot. I do remember seeing him play a handful of times. So we'll see if he might be one of those low risk, high reward kind of signings for Lou and the Islanders. I know they've been, they could certainly benefit from another offensive winger. And hopefully he turns out to be that player, but hard to say exactly where things go. We'll have to see how training camp goes. Of course, news out of Detroit. We found out that Andrew Kopp, the newly signed unrestricted free agent, did require abdominal surgery this offseason, so he's not quite ready to go yet. He will miss the first part of training camp, and they also had some significant recovery still going on for Jake Wallman, who'll be out till about mid-November, and Mark Pysyk and Robbie Fabry won't be available to the Red Wings until around mid-January, so they're going to miss around half the season or more. So Robbie Fabry, has missed so much time throughout his young career. It's a story of it, really, is the amount of injuries the kid's suffered and how much time he has missed. So some not so great news there. Speaking of more injuries, the Ducks also confirmed that one of their young centermen, Sam Carrick, did require hip surgery this offseason. He did have the surgery earlier back in May, but it's a 6-month recovery, so he still has a few months to go before he'll be able to play. So he's probably looking at an end of November, maybe into December type of timeline before he'll make it back here as well. Now, onto the Maple Leafs. We talked yesterday about Timothy Liljegren being injured to start training camp, but we didn't know the full details. We learned today that he required a hernia surgery, and the recovery time is about 6 weeks. So he's certainly going to miss all of training camp in the first few weeks of the regular season. So that's certainly not going to be a great thing to start with, especially where they're already without Sandin, who was unsigned. So guys like Victor Mete and Jordy Ben are certainly going to have an opportunity to play right off the get-go. They're going to be looking to obviously try to seize the opportunity to make the coach's decision tough when they do have a full healthy decor and see if they can find a spot to try to stick around. Mark Giordano also made a comment that if the coach needed him to, he would be comfortable playing on his weak side. It's probably not his preference, but something he's willing to do on a short-term basis if they're kind of stuck for right-hand D, which they certainly are. Outside of Liljegren and Justin Hall, there's not much there. Majority of them shoot left, so we'll see what can take place there. So Giordano might be doing that for them. Of course, we all had remarks from Kyle Dubas as well. The big thing around Dubas was his contract status. Everybody seems to know that Kyle Dubas is entering the final year of his contract with the Maple Leafs to be the general manager. He made a point to talk about it today. He says that Brendan Shanahan, the president of the team, made a point to tell Kyle Dubas earlier in the offseason that a contract extension was not coming, that he was not even going to entertain talking about it. They would visit that at the end of the season. So I know I've talked a bit about before, and you'll see my Maple Leaf preview that'll be coming out tomorrow. I certainly make some comments saying that I feel this is a pivotal year in Kyle Dubas' job security, not only for the team, but I think, considering the amount of moves that the team has made over the last couple of years, changing a lot of not so much the main characters, but the supporting cast. We've seen tons of changes in that regard. We've seen a coaching change from Babcock to Keefe a couple of years ago now. Shanahan's been there a long time, and honestly, I think if the Leafs don't have playoff success this year, I think Kyle Dubas' job could be on the line. I think to a degree, he is on the hot seat. Now, obviously, it's up to the players to get the job done, and we'll see. So he is in a final year of his deal, and depending on how the year goes, we'll determine if he gets a contract extension or not. But he says he's totally comfortable with that and is fine being judged at the end of the season. So, obviously, like I said, that's going to be a big defining moment. There's how they do in the playoffs, in my opinion. Speaking of GMs, we also found out that the Buffalo Sabres have offered a multi-year extension to GM Kevin Adams. So obviously that's good news for him. Good stability for the franchise after having a lot of certainly a lot of people coming in and out of that organization between GMs and coaches over the last number of years. And even though I was skeptical of this hire when it first took place, I wasn't sure Kevin Adams was the right guy for the job, the right amount of experience, but he's done pretty good. I mean, for the most part, I think there's obviously, like any GM, there's a few things you could be probably a little bit critical of and wonder if he could have done better at certain trades. But I know some people are still critical of the Eichel deal. But you know what? When certain deals like that, when everybody in the world knows the player wants out, it can be difficult. Really, you don't have any leverage, right? So it's not the easiest thing to pull off. But he will be sticking around on a multi-year extension to remain the GM in Buffalo, and I think it's fair to say that he's at least deserves that opportunity for right now. They're starting to come out of the rebuild here a little bit. They still have some more things to gather. The kids there certainly need to have some more growth and development. I think we're going to probably see another year or two before they really take some big strides, but they certainly have a lot of the foundational pieces coming together. So we'll see how the Sabres navigate through that and continue to improve to hopefully get some playoff hockey in their near future. Now, of course, Ben Bishop is a retired goaltender now, the Dallas Stars, unable to continue his career due to injuries, trying to make a comeback last year. Unfortunately, didn't work out. His contract went on to long-term injury reserve with Dallas, but now that contract was traded to the Buffalo Sabres. Now, we talked about back in the last couple of weeks of Ben Bishop taking on a new role off the ice with the Dallas Stars, working in, I believe it was player development. But Jim Nill announced today that after review from the NHL, they've determined that they don't want him to be eligible to work in that kind of capacity just yet. They want him to have to wait until his NHL playing contract has come to an expiration here before he can take up an off-ice role. Little surprised to hear that. I understand he's unable to play, but, really at the same time, look at guys like Chris Pronger in the past has worked for the league while being on LTIR. So, I mean, I know Pronger's not there now or anything, but like that's happened in the past. So, a little bit confusing as to why, but certainly that's the ruling from the league. So, he will have to wait to get into any kind of role in that regard. The Edmonton Oilers announced that Mike Smith came in to report to camp and failed his physical. So, he indeed will be going on LTIR like we all suspected. And he also confirmed that Slater Cuckoo, one of their depth defensemen, would not be there at the beginning of training camp. I believe he's going to be out due to personal reasons. I think they even went as far to say that he's taking some time away from the team to work on his mental health, something like that. I'm surprised they actually went into those kind of details, but that's what we learned. He will not be there when things first get underway. So all kinds of tidbits that way. There could be other things that I may have missed around the league. So many teams have been putting out information here today. Of course, onto the rumor mill, though. Jacob Chychrun had a good media conference and actually confirmed a lot of the things that we've been talking about here for the last number, real off and on, for quite a while now. And we know Jacob Chychrun's been in the rumor mill for a good chunk of last season. I know there's always critics on the channels talking about the rumors not coming to be or not true or whatever. There's always somebody criticized. Everybody likes to be critical nowadays. But everything we've talked about is 100% confirmed by the player right from his mouth today. Jacob Chychrun confirms exactly how it went down, that essentially the team approached him first about being traded, and he accepted that fact that they wanted to do that, and now he's kind of come to the point where not only was he okay with it, but he wants and prefers it. He's not going to be able to participate in the first part of training camp. He's still recovering, I guess. He had a wrist surgery in the offseason, and he also had to have some bone spurs removed from his ankle, so he's not quite 100% healed up, ready to go and cleared to get on the ice and do things. So he'll miss the first little bit of training camp with the team, but he said, essentially at this point that he's going to remain with the team until a trade comes to be. He decided that after the team talked to him and presented him with the concept of being traded, that he would prefer to go play for a team that actually has a chance to, compete for playoffs, and that he was ready to move on. It's just quite that simple. And he kind of sounded like he hoped that it would have taken place by now, but it has not. So he's going to have to be a good pro. He essentially said he's going to be a good pro, good teammate, said all the right things. Obviously still looking forward to that trade coming to be now. Now, there's still some, especially people in Ottawa, as the Senators open up camp today, doing a lot of fitness testing and other things that Sens media are still talking about. Jacob Chychrun, of course, commenting on this press conference that he did in Arizona, talking about confirming their interest is still very much alive. I think they're still the main team that seems to be in on him. Doesn't mean it's going to happen that way, but I do think Pierre Dorion and his team will certainly be having additional discussions with the Coyotes, trying to see if they can't get a better price. That's obviously been what's holding things up here so far. Obviously, the high asking price, and it makes sense that even though the Sens have the pieces needed to put together a package to get it done, they don't want to give away too much to make this happen. They don't want to really, they obviously, like anybody, want to get a fair deal. So do look for Jacob Chychrun. I think part of what he had to say today might put a little bit of pressure on the team. I'm sure the team doesn't want a distraction in training camp. I'm sure they want to get this looked after as soon as possible. And I think he was probably trying to say a lot of the right things, for one, so that his teammates were comfortable with him, for one. Secondly, to maybe put a little pressure on the team to hopefully get something done sooner than later. But there you have it, is Jacob Chychrun confirms 100% why the rumors are the way they are, that he does indeed want to trade, and that how it all kind of came to be. Now, of course, Bruce Garriock, who covers the Sens, who covers for the local newspaper as well as working for TSN, talked about how not only is Chychrun of interest, but Ethan Bear is as well. Another option who would come a lot cheaper out of Carolina, who the Canes are reportedly shopping. Of course, he's actually right shot D, whereas Chychrun's a left. They would prefer a right-hander if they can get one. But of course, I think they like Chychrun enough that they're willing to have somebody play on their weak side to compensate for that. It seems like they're obviously real fond of Jacob Chychrun, and he would be their preference if they can do it. But Ethan Bear is certainly an option, and Ethan Bear is still very much on the radar of the Vancouver Canucks, but the Hurricanes still looking to make a deal there as well. So certainly look for Ottawa to maybe make a deal. Wouldn't be shocking if by the time training camp is done, if they do either get one of these two guys, or maybe they end up going a different route. But still, No matter what, it's still possible that we see them acquire somebody. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, look for them to maybe trade a defenseman. I wouldn't expect this right away, but maybe as we get to the end of camp before the regular season opens. For starters, they have more than enough NHL defensemen, so I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe even move more than one. But one player to watch for is Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Now, of course, they also acquired Ty Smith earlier this offseason, and they have a ton of veterans that are certainly going to play ahead of both of these guys, including newly acquired Jeff Petrie, of course, longtime vet, and newly signed Chris Letang. They get Brian Dumoulin, Marcus Pettersson. There's a lot of experienced defenseman there, and there's a good chance that between Smith and Joseph that only one is likely going to make the top 6, at least to start the season. At least no guarantees, but that's how things look right now. Now, here's the thing, is Joseph needs waivers to go to the minors, but there's some that feel that Ty Smith has better upside and might be a little higher on the preference list here for the Penguins, at least so far as camp begins. Now, of course, as camp goes on, maybe Joseph outplays them, and they do send Smith to the minors to start the year because he is waivers exempt right now. But it is possible that if they really want to give Smith that playing time, and also having extra guys in the line, like between like Rumours and Friedman, they have enough other NHL depth experience around that Pierre-Olivier Joseph might become expendable. So you just never know. They don't want to lose him on waivers, that's for sure. And as time goes on here, they get too many D, and if they, they're not going to want to risk losing somebody. So don't be surprised if you possibly see a deal. But once we're further into camp within the next week or so, week to 10 days, you're going to see a lot of players go through NHL waivers before the NHL season gets underway. Not everybody can be traded. All teams' first preference, I'm sure, would be to trade a player and get something back rather than put them through waivers and lose them for nothing. But not everybody can make that happen. It's just that simple. So you're bound to see a ton of waiver activity coming up here once training camp gets far enough along and teams start making cuts. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.